Hey, Ancor, can you guys hear okay? Can you see okay?
Yep, I can hear and see.
Yes, we can hear.
Okay, tell me if you can see the presentation. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. We'll leave the presentation up, or you want to see this here?
Leave the presentation.
You've done it before. I'll give you the mouse just in case you get out of place.
Okay.
You have to rerun it. Yep. Made it back. If you want to see, you can click over there until click here. And then there, and then if you just click back here, so I got your whole screen.
Are you sure?
I got the whole screen sharing. So whatever you see out there,
Got it.
they can see it.
Okay.
They said I can dig Harris. But with your little mouse voice, I don't know if they're gonna be able to hear you.
I'll speak up.
You got it.
Where's the microphone? Is it over there?
It's in the camera.
It's in the camera. Okay.
Yeah.
Because,
She went down to something.
yeah, she's. I got it.
It's 12:02. Let's get going. So I'm going to do a little bit of an intro, and then I'll turn it over to Rachel. So I'll get the pleasure of listening to me for a couple minutes. I wanted to just provide an overview of our kind of generalized marketing and business development strategies. What we aim to do is promote our services, staff, and capabilities of the company, and we do that a variety of ways. One of the primary ways is having client meetings. We frequently go around the state and talk to different DOT departments, different DPW agencies, and present our capabilities, present our experience, our project portfolio, and the staff that we have to offer. We also attend, different conferences, and we have, significant involvement in different professional organizations. That's ACEC, ASHE, ASCE, county engineers, etc. And what we do with those meetings is we discuss what each of these agencies has on their intended forecast for the next 6 to 12 months. And from there, we identify the opportunities that we want to pursue. We take a look at each one of those opportunities and put together a
Sorry.
I'm not going to wrote that.
So we take a look at each one of those opportunities, evaluate what it is, what the services are, what the scope is, and kind of strategize of the best way to present or go into that contract to hopefully be successful. Some of the things that we do are do some pre-advertisement efforts. Those are kind of like standalone projects where we will make an attempt to do some preliminary design work ahead of the announcement of the contract. And other efforts, they are a little larger or the scope is a little more diverse. We will look at joint venture opportunities or other kinds of partnering where, for example, it might be advantageous for us to take a sub-consultant role, in which case we will try to team with other industry partners and take a sub role or do some kind of trading. And when all that is said and done, what that leads to is some sort of customized proposal effort, which is one of the purposes of this meeting, is to just generally describe what our process is in order to make a better proposal product. Some of the key elements that we look for in these proposal efforts are updated and current and accurate project descriptions, detailed staff resume information, and continued creativity for our different ways that we present our qualifications and also the project approaches. So when we are successful with those efforts, we win a contract, and the best way to continue to market and do business development in our industry is by doing projects successfully. Being a good partner with each one of our clients, and when they like working with us, they want to hire us again for future contracts. So the more successful projects that we have, the more repeat clients that we have, and it is easier for us to, win future work. Okay. So I just wanted to share a little, it was I was listening to a podcast, and it was about actually how to improve my golf game. And they were discussing this, I'll call it a case study or a project that Stanford University did for one of their classes. And the gist of the assignment was to take $5 and generate as much money as you possibly can off of that $5 in a 2-hour period. So out of the students in the class, they split up into 14 teams, and they had a few days to kind of strategize their approach. And then as soon as they opened their envelope of money, they had 2 hours to do whatever they were planning on doing. The assignment was given to them on a Wednesday, and then on Sunday, they had to kind of turn in a summary slide of what they did, and then the Monday morning they had to do a presentation to the rest of the class. So some of the key strategies that they were intending to kind of instill on the students was entrepreneurship and identifying different opportunities, leveraging limiting resources, and promoting creativity. All right, so some of the common strategies was that, if you give somebody $5 and you say get the best return on investment, you might get a differing sense of how to actually accomplish that. Some of the common strategies were to set up a car wash and charge a few dollars to have your car washed by the students, or something similar with a lemonade stand. Some of the common things were buying some item for the worth of $5 and trying to trade up into more valuable things in some sort of elaborate bartering system. Other groups, they bought lottery tickets, or they took the $5 to a local casino or something like that, or bought scratch offs, something along those lines. So those are some of the common ones. The more creative approaches were what a couple of groups did was they booked restaurant reservations for busy Saturday night on campus, and they took those reservations and tried to resell them to different people for $20 a piece, which led into actually checking into the different restaurants where they have the pager system, and then they would take that pager for the presumably the next up in line and go back in the queue and sell the pager for the next table for a few dollars, and then continually swapping those pagers over and over, within that 2-hour limit that they had. Another group, they were filling bicycle tires with air and accepting donations at the student center. That ended up producing a little bit of money, so it was one of the better ideas. However, what I thought was most interesting, and why I'm actually presenting this, was one group decided that the $5 was actually just not really a factor, and the real value in this assignment was the 3-minute presentation that they had to give to the class. So they went to one local business and sold the 3-minute time slot as sort of like an advertisement or a commercial for $650. And the local business was interested in presenting their product to the students in the class, and that was deemed the most successful way to produce the best return on investment, which I thought was a very interesting approach to the assignment, and obviously was the best one. So what does that mean, or why did I just present this? So what we do in our efforts here, we're trying to take a product, our engineering services, our construction management, our staff, our resources, and we are presenting them to clients that, you know, presumably would like to buy those, but we have to be on paper in our proposals the best out of all of the competition. And how we do that is mainly up for debate. And what we are constantly looking to do is innovate and advance our approach. And I really want to push the notion that we should avoid saying things like, that's how we always used to do it, or that's how we used to do it, so we should always continue to do that. Because just because we did something 5 years ago does not necessarily mean that we need to continue doing it that way. So we're consistently looking for new ways to develop our content, our qualifications, and how to better present our qualifications. So when a client is reading our proposal for, you know, X contract, they read that and say, we need to hire Burtis and Associates because this proposal is so much better than everybody else's. So, you know, what Rachel is going to kind of provide a little bit more detail of what we're actually asking, but what I'm asking is for everyone to just kind of creatively and you know, all on the same page, think about better ways to present what we have to offer in proposals, in presentations, in reports, and actual project work. As long as we're moving forward in the right direction, we're doing the right thing.
Okay, so I'm gonna go over the general process. I know that there are several people on this call that are familiar with this process, but maybe there's, I think there's a bunch of people who are not actively involved in all of it. So a brief overview of what our process is once we decide to go for a project or on-call contract, we schedule a kickoff meeting. The marketing team fills in this worksheet on the side here. At the kickoff meeting, we discuss, you know, what subs do we need, who are the best subs that we want to try to reach out to first. We'll look at the proposal criteria and determine, you know, is there any component where the engineers are needed to draft any part of the sections. Generally speaking, qualifications and experience and most things are drafted by marketing, and then technical and price proposals and schedules are done by the PMs. We'll select projects and resumes that best showcase our experience and staffing to be successful on this contract. And we'll establish and hopefully keep a schedule for proposal development and drafts of each sections. A little bit on schedule. I think that sometimes it's a little tempting to think that just because the proposal is due on a certain day that we can kind of go more last minute, but something I want to kind of portray to everybody is that marketing has a significant amount of things that we need to do after we get drafts from you. That could be adding, you know, visual flair, that could be, you know, compiling everything, editing everything, sending out for review. We need a couple of days of review for at least the first draft. Once we have a solid first draft, then we need to do that again, and maybe even a third time, depending on the proposal and how big it is. Generally speaking, if it's a large contract or, you know, large dollar amount, then we want to put our best foot forward and have you know, a really polished final draft. And then if it's something that needs to be printed and delivered, most often they're not, but we do still have some that need to be printed and then delivered. If it's in Virginia, we need an extra couple of days for just even delivery. So that's something that I just want everybody to be mindful of. You know, when we set our schedules, you know, these are all things that are factored into those schedules. Things to consider when we go after a proposal. We want to think about who is our competition. Is this an open RFP that is open to literally anybody? And if so, who would that be? Who do we think that our strongest competition is going to be? Or is this a task order under an on-call where we're maybe competing against a couple other firms that also are incumbents on that contract? Is this a repeat or new contract? Who are the incumbents? Again, we just want to figure out what edge do we have against our competition and how can we best showcase it, hopefully throughout all sections of the proposal. Is this a multi-step RFP process or a single one? So do we have to put our best foot forward and try to win it on this proposal, and we don't we get one shot and that's what it is, or are we trying to get shortlisted and then we really win it on a second round technical proposal or oral presentation? If it's a standalone project, what is the budget? Is it listed in the RFP? If not, can we do some research, look in the capital improvement program and find out what they have budgeted for the project? And can we do the project somewhere around what they have budgeted? And then also, whenever we're drafting proposals, we want to keep in mind who our target audience is. It's going to include both technical engineers and non-technical engineering staff. So we want to make sure that what we're writing appeals to our wide target audience. Here's a laundry list of different kinds of sections that can be included in these types of proposals. The one that have asterisks by, generally speaking, the ones that we need help from the engineers on. And then as we kind of go into specifics of the technical narratives or project approaches for proposals, I have a couple of examples here, but basically we want to make it as easy for the client to find what they need as possible. So generally speaking, these RFPs have, a lot of information. Hopefully we've read and reviewed the whole thing. And then we kind of narrow in on what the proposal sections are going to be. And then if they have evaluation criteria. So I have an example up here on the right, top right from a recent Anne Arundel County proposal, where it's very clear. They literally spell out what we need to be addressing. So I want everybody to outline each section using this information. So we have technical approach section. And then we literally have a heading, consistency approach, established project goals. We have another heading, innovative approaches, and then we develop content based on those two things to fit in that section. So we make it as easy as possible for the client to find the information that they need to be storing us on, and that they don't have to be looking around for it and trying to find it, because even if it's there and if they can't find it, they're not going to give us the proper credit on it. So another one, the one in the middle, bottom right, is from a DDAP proposal. That one has plenty of information that we can do the same things. It's not as clearly bulleted, but you can still draw the same information and literally use those items in section B, C, and D to make headings and then develop content for each of those things. And then it could be something as, I don't want to say vague, but on this bottom left here, it could just be these 4 lines with weights for each one, and then it's very open to interpretation for what we include in each section. And then, we have more flexibility to include what we want. So pros and cons to each, but these are all kinds of things that we see on an ongoing basis. So we want to think about, what is our proposal strategy? How can we showcase our competitive edge? Is it our team, either with our staff, our subs, maybe exclusive sub, maybe JV partner? What do we all have that are bringing to the table? What do we have that we can maybe showcase that's better than our competition? Do we have experience with that specific client or type of client? Either, like for Howard County, we, semi-recently won that project for Dorsey Run Road. We didn't have much, if any, experience with Howard County, but we have lots of county experience with similar types of projects and goals and challenges. So we can showcase that, and hopefully that is received well from the client. Do we have experience with similar project types? So maybe we don't have experience with that specific client, but we have done a myriad of the same type of project for other clients. Do we have different company or staff certifications that are applicable to this contract or project? Is it a traffic contract? And so showcasing that we have at least 5 PTOEs, or that it's an SBR contract and we're SBR certified. These kinds of things are things that we would want to show beginning, middle, end, throughout as much as possible. What is our proposed design? If it's a standalone project, what kind of innovation or technology can we bring to the table that would hopefully wow the potential client? Or conversely, is it a low bid project where we're kind of doing more bare bones types of services to meet the criteria and meet the project goals efficiently? So we're trimming, anything extra. It's a different type of strategy. So when you're drafting these technical approaches, we want to include some kind of background of the project or overview of the services for the on-call contract. Hopefully, if it's a project, we've gone to the site, taken some photos that generally presents well, that we've done our homework. and also provide some visuals for breaking up the text on the page. We want to talk about our project objectives and end goals. What does a successful project look like? Is it safer, more efficient, increased capacity? There's, a whole laundry list of different goals that can be included in a project and what factors contribute to that goal. We want to discuss this, make it very clear that we understand what they want and how to achieve those goals. Something that I don't know if people do or not, but we can, in developing our strategy and our proposal information, we can list features and functionalities, and then put a label next to them. Are these must have? Are these nice to have? Are these future needs or not in scope? These are the things that we can kind of match to different parts of the project and decide if those are things that we should be including. If it's a bare bones kind of low big kind of project, then we would cut out all the unnecessary things. And we want to be as clear as possible with what the team roles are. Some of the feedback that we've gotten on some proposals in the past is, they weren't sure what exactly the sub consultants were going to do. So if we know exactly what they're going to do, we want to discuss that and be specific. Having a chronological discussion of the project progression, either by submittal and or task or both. So either it's 30, 60, 90 or 35, 65, 95, whatever it is, kind of having those as headings and then the tasks under each of them with specifics for what is included in each of those. Along with hopefully cost-effective improvements, how we can help them complete the project and not waste their money and hit the budget. And then in the end or somewhere in there, we should have a list of the technical standards and guidelines that we will follow in our design. After we draft these sections, we want to have a readability check, keeping in mind who our target audience is, and then it's going to be a variety of types of people. So is the message that we're trying to convey coming across? Did we show how we will help them meet their goals and meet their budget? We want to use simple and clear language and action words and verbs like we will do this, we will do that. These are the things that we will do for you to meet your goals. And visuals, visuals, visuals. I like more pictures and colors and graphics and things as possible. It's something that I would really, really appreciate if it can be more of a collaborative type of environment where it's not just marketing that does it, but it's something that's thought of when we're drafting the first draft of the section. We're working together to kind of develop ideas for different kinds of things that we can incorporate. I know that Puskar has given marketing several ideas for things that we've worked on and included in proposals. So that's the kind of thing that is super helpful. If you have an idea or want to draw out certain kinds of information, we are happy to execute those. Visuals are super important. What is on the screen speaks for itself. I know that for myself personally, if I'm looking at something, especially if something is a proposal that, maybe these reviewers are getting a stack of them on their desk or a stack of them in their inbox or whatever electronic or hard copy version they're looking at. We want to engage them as much as possible. If they have a sea of text that they're supposed to read, the likelihood of them both reading all of it and absorbing all of it is basically nothing. So anything that we can do to try to transmit the information that we want them to stick with them is going to be more successful. Here's some examples for some visuals that we've included in other proposals. There's gobs of examples. We're always looking for more color, graphics, content. And also, one thing that I wanted to say for this drawing up here in the middle right, I don't know how drawings are made in MicroStation or whatever is used for this, but if there's any way that we can get type drawings like this with color instead of just like a black and white screenshot of a PDF or something, that is preferred. So if anybody can tell me how we can do that and if that's something that we do for most projects or not, but anyway, this looks much better than just a screenshot of a black and white drawing. So just wanted to point that out. Here's an example of on the left, it's all text. It's honestly not something that is super inviting to read. The one on the right has a bit more information. I mean, it's not really anything fancy, but it's, you know, a graph, or it's a chart. It's got some color in it. It presents the information a little bit differently than just several paragraphs. And then here's another example. This one on the right is, again, one of the suggestions that Puskar had asked marketing to develop, and Kirsten made this, and I think that it just presents the information better. It's more appealing. And so anything that we can do to incorporate these types of things is always preferred. And we are happy to help execute, but I would love for it to be a collaborative environment where if you have an idea or anything, we can work together to come up with something. Okay, so project and resume database. I know that this is not something that everybody gets super excited about doing, but it's very important for all of us, both professionally, like, you know, for your own resume, to have a list of all the projects that you've worked on, what you've done for each of them. It shows the development of what you've done over the course of your career. And we basically need this information to present well in our proposals. So if we have a bunch of poorly written projects in the resumes, it's not going to translate well to our clients, and we're not going to come across as the most qualified and professional firm, which means we don't win work and we don't have enough work to keep our staff busy. So generally speaking, we need updates at least quarterly to your master resume files. So we try to send out emails quarterly to prompt you to add to your resumes. Sometimes that goes over okay, sometimes it doesn't, but you don't need to wait for us to email you. You can add to your resume at any time. Maybe it's a good habit to get into where you finish a project or you submit something and then you go to your resume and you add that project to your resume, or having some kind of benchmark to remind you to, oh, I should go through and update my resume. Showing correlation between the project examples that we're including on in proposals and that the staff that we're presenting, ST staff, works well. So we need these to be updated to include those projects on your resumes. And then as marketing, we use those master resumes to see what you're working on. So they really need to be up to date. Because we're not working on the projects. Our job is to sell that you know how to do these projects and that you've worked on them. I don't know why that's coming. Okay. So I promise you, we are not trying to give you busy work. We're always looking for better ways to present our qualifications and innovate compared to our competition. We want to make it as easy as possible for the reviewers to find what they need to make their decisions. All right. So I have some specifics of what to include on resumes. There are some differences between what we would call a project manager resume and a discipline specific resume. For the project managers, generally speaking, we want to include a lot, like a whole idea of what the project or contract includes. So it would be more than what they've necessarily done on like a day-to-day basis. I mean, it's more high level, it's supervisor specific tasks. I think sometimes I've seen a lot of different things over the course of 10 years that I've had this job, but one of the things that I always edit out is if people put in that they prepared scope and price and anything that is involved before even getting the project. We want to include overall scope items, and then, you know, sometimes if it's an on-call contract, we would include like an idea or a specified list of what's included in the contract, and then have the names of a couple projects at the end to kind of show a little different, or a couple different projects to show like what was done under that contract. So that's the PM. For the discipline specific, we want to focus only on the discipline that was performed. We want to have a little bit of background goals of the project, and then we want to target the length of the write-ups to be around 6 to 8 lines. I think sometimes people go real brief or real elaborate, maybe is the best word to use. And so they can just be really long, but it would be best to have, you know, somewhere around 6 to 8 lines. It doesn't have to be exactly that, but somewhere around there. Something that we want to kind of include for any kind of resume. Sometimes we have like very specific, you know, this project was 0.32 acres or 1.75 miles or whatever. Like, you know, we can round approximately 1.5 miles or approximately half acre or something. It doesn't need to be that super specific for the resumes, in my opinion. If we can kind of draw out information about the project or challenges that were faced and how they were solved briefly, that would be excellent. It kind of translates to the client and they can say, oh, they were working to increase safety on this project, and that's our main goal for this one. So, kind of drawing those inferences where this is the end goal, this is the goal for this project, and we have the same kind of goal for ours. And the resumes are to showcase what the staff is, staff did on that project. Generally speaking, I don't think that we should have firm names on it at all. I think I've gotten those a lot from the subs where it'll say like, the firm did all these different services and then this person was the geotechnical engineer on this project, which it's not what we're trying to show. If they were the geotechnical engineer for that project, then they should be talking about the geotechnical components of that project. So I have some examples here. I know it's a lot of text. I don't expect you to read all of it, but basically the example at the top there, it just says it's involved in the preparation of the scope of work, price proposal, coordination with subs, design, team selection, and a bunch of stuff that's really not relevant to the actual meat and potatoes of the project. So the only thing that is really helpful on that is that was the retrofit of 8 existing stormwater management ponds and some stream stabilization. So what I would literally cut out like a whole 75% of that first sentence, and then I would want to expand on what are the stormwater management ponds, like what types of ponds were they, stream stabilization, what goals, what challenges, just anything that would be marginally interesting to talk about and describe the project more in detail would be better. So the better examples that I have below, I have an example of an on-call for a PM and then an example of a project specific write-up. So the one on top for the on-call, it lists a bunch of services that are included under the contract. It has a couple of tasks listed at the end where, we did a concession stand restoration and addition of new amenities at a park and CMI services for the field light installations. So it kind of shows what's generally included or could be included under the contract and then a couple specifics for what we actually did. For the project one, again, it includes like more of a high level because this is the project manager resume. The types of services that were included and yeah, that's kind of what we're looking for. So here's discipline specific resumes. The one on top specifies all the different software that was used, where that's okay to include some of, but it just really focuses on the software and the approval of the study is obtained by the Office of Structures and DER. We want to try to appeal to a wider target audience. So, that would be okay to include if we're including that for a state highway proposal, but generally speaking, we would want to talk more about the project itself and what was actually done. So you use that software to do what? Would be my first question. So I have a couple of better written examples down below. Kind of the first one talks about what was the goals of the project, identify safety and operational issues, evaluate vehicular circulation, assessing impacts. Then it says, what did we do? And then ends with, we prepared a report with the results of the analysis and estimates for the design and construction. So kind of says the goals, what did we do? And then what did we submit? And then another example that is the same kind of thing. Project databases.
Does anybody have any questions on that portion?
I do have a question. This is Pushkar. So oftentimes I have seen that when we're submitting staff resume for proposals at EOI stage, especially, we are using the open-end contracts as our projects on the resumes to capture most of the keywords and the scope of work items on the RFP.
For the purposes of this presentation or training, we sort of avoided our approach to state highway contracts because they are really much different than anything else, and they have their own process. So.
Okay. That's understandable. So generally speaking, I've noticed that couple things we miss is as far as when we are preparing these resumes, whoever is doing it, we have the master resume on our M drive, and everybody's preparing that, and we should be updating it at least once in 6 months. The couple things that go into that is a good description of the project. So each PM should update their project write-ups if the projects are getting completed. And I think that should be part of our sort of project completion procedure, like a corporate project closeout procedure, task closeout procedure, that unless that is done, the projects will not be closed. That is my recommendation. The other thing is, and that should be billed to the client as well, as far as creating that document, because that document really captures what was scope versus what was actually completed. The total fee and what was the outcome, was the project completed within budget and schedule, or the project goals were fulfilled. And that leads to a lot of information that can be used to generate the resumes and the master resumes, specific issues that you dealt with in the project, how you address those. It doesn't have to be like really detailed, but some of the key highlights on the projects. So the client, when they read it, they will be able to see what was the individual person's role on the project, and how they used to utilize that role to aid to the success of the project. And depending on your role, if you're a PM or you're a highway engineer or traffic engineer or water resources engineer, whatever role you're playing for that particular pursuit, that needs to really come out from that thing. And we don't have a lot of space. I know that's always a challenge, but that's where the creativity comes in, is as to like what information to share. And it's one challenge I've seen a lot of the times. We are just copying and pasting stuff from one resume to the other, and just be recognizing that fact that everybody's role is different. And even if we use the same project in 2 or 3 key staff's resumes, we probably need to make sure that the write-up of each project for those resumes should be geared towards the individual roles of those people and what they actually did on those projects. So yeah, I think that will really help. And as Anthony mentioned, that some of the clients, each client look at it slightly differently. And I know, for example, in Virginia, they have a separate expectation on when they're talking about resumes. So we'll be pursuing a project, very soon in Virginia, and we're going to be looking at the resumes very carefully to make sure that fits, fulfills their requirements.
Yeah, I mean, each client is a little bit different. So, most of this training is geared towards the bulk, which, kind of the strategy for the bulk of proposals, or, having our master resume files with well-written project examples. And then for specific, Virginia clients or others that kind of need the write-ups to be written a little bit differently, then we tailor those for those specific clients. But for like the database purposes, for what we have on file, this is generally speaking what we're looking for.
Does everybody understand what she's talking about with the discipline specific resumes versus like a manager resume? Helpful sometimes if it's more of an interactive training. We can better tailor our discussion points to kind of bridge the gap so where people aren't grasping the concept.
Is that, Anthony, is that something you're looking for in our resume, that we
Yes,
have
and
on our
yes.
M drive? So, you know,
Yeah.
with two separate.
Yes, I will give you a perfect example. That's Encore, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't have the team screen up.
Okay.
So Encore, there are times where we present you as the project manager on a water resource job. And what we would like to do with that resume that we submit is show your experience in a manager role. So you have kind of QA, QC responsibilities, you have oversight, you have staffing, and the descriptions that we use are kind of broadly describing all of the projects. Now, there are other examples on, say, a highway lead project where you're not being proposed in a manager role. You are the discipline-specific water resources engineer that we're proposing. And then in those instances, it's not a good idea to present you with a bunch of project manager projects. We want to show project-specific things where we are discussing your unique role as a water resources or an H&H engineer. And we kind of dive deeper into each of the projects and show a little bit more technical content versus the high-level overview of the different projects. And we use that similar scenario for basically every proposal. There's a PM, and then there's highway people, water resource people, structure people, traffic people, construction people, anything under the sun. And that creates the need for us to develop, in some instances, project examples that are written one or two different ways, maybe even three, depending on the use of it. And certain things are, tailored in or out of the write-up, versus a slightly modified version where it kind of talks about different stuff. Similarly, there are projects that can be written from different points of view, where there are a lot of different services or disciplines provided in those projects that can be used kind of across the board for different disciplines. And that creates a very comprehensive and tailored proposal when you have a large project as one of your project examples, and then you can also show that the PM on that job was also the proposed PM, and the proposed water resources engineer was also the water resources engineer on the project, and the traffic engineer was the traffic engineer, and the highway engineer was the highway engineer, so forth and so on. And when everything kind of meshes together, that really creates the best proposal that we can put together. And it's imperative that we keep our kind of database up to date, because Rachel and Katie and Kirsten, they don't necessarily know what you're working on day to day, week to week, month to month, and the only reference material that they have is the stuff that's in your resume. And if that project doesn't exist, just because you haven't updated it, we're sort of doing the proposal with one hand tied behind our back. So the point of this was to just sort of stress the importance of that, getting good quality descriptions written and keeping it also up to date. Because a lot of times a project is written today, and then next week the scope takes a drastic change, and we get a change order, and now we're really doing something different. And that, depending on how often you update this stuff, that project could be kind of incorrectly written based on the change in the project. So it's really helpful if you think about this regularly and update it also regularly, and knowing that if something changes in one of these projects, you kind of in the back of your head know that you need to make that change to let everybody else know.
Okay, so just like the resumes, the database resumes that we have, we also have our project databases, where we have, all different folders for all the different types of disciplines of projects that we have. I have a couple of things up here that are listed, that I like to see in project resumes or project descriptions. we want to try to steer away from just including like a laundry list of the services that were included under with like a bunch of comments or a bunch of comments in between. You know, if we kind of try to tell a story as much as we can, if we can draw out some kind of distinguishing information about the challenges for that project, maybe it was something as, I don't want to say simple, but maybe it was just, you know, we had a bunch of utilities that we needed to work around or figuring out. Maybe we designed a retaining wall to avoid an environmental area or anything that's part of the project that could both set it aside as making it a little bit more interesting to talk about, but then also appeal to our client and, oh, well, we have the issues on all of these different projects that we have as well. So it translates a little bit easier and readability to make it a little bit more interesting if we have things like that. Generally, we have an overview paragraph, you know, maybe the goals of the projects. We have a couple paragraphs breaking out into either disciplines that were involved or, you know, sometimes it's a structural project and it was just a couple of different structural components to it or, you know, whatever it is, just trying to draw out the information that we're trying to show. If there's anything with cost savings, obviously clients love that. They want to save money. So if we had the design that saved the money in both, I think either the design or the construction or in maintenance or all three of those, we definitely want to highlight that. We want to have visuals, photos, design drawings in color or renderings. We really don't like to include like the existing conditions type of photos. You know, here's this crummy looking broad bridge that clearly needs to be replaced. Unless we're doing like a before and after, it just doesn't really translate very well. And so the marketing staff, you know, some of the things that I can do with writing project examples is I can go on the P drive and see, you know, what are the documents that are in there from the scope that was drafted when the project was started. And I can draft a project, write it based on that. But since I'm not involved in the actual execution of the project, I don't know when, you know, it changes and, you know, trying to go through and into all of the different folders on the P drive is time and labor intensive. So it's just, I'm happy to do a draft, but it can't just come from marketing. It has to come from, you know, a team collaborative type of environment. And we really want to, okay, well, just a second. We really want to use, we can use incorrect information accidentally because we have projects that were written and then scope changed and we're continuing to use them not knowing, in marketing not knowing that the scope changed. And we want to be accurate. Okay, Jennifer.
We have a question from the audience. In general, big picture, do we have a go or no go process in selecting which project to pursue?
Yes. We have.
Can you just discuss that a little bit?
Yeah. So we have a marketing meeting every Monday at 9:30 with marketing team and a lot of PM level staff and directors. And so we have a list. I have an Excel spreadsheet that discusses or that lists out all the projects or RFPs that are out. And we go over all of that list in that meeting and we discuss if it's a go, if it's a maybe, keep it on there. We'll discuss it more next week, or if it's a no and we take it off.
Some of the general factors are, you know, what the scope is, what the client is, you know, if there's a price factor involved and if it's a service that has a price involved in the award, then, you know, is it something that we, generally speaking, projects that are bid, we do knowing we're going to take a loss on it. So, you know, the question becomes, do we want to do that? Is it something that we want to take a loss on? And the next question would be, why would you take a project that you're knowingly going to take a loss on? You know, in some cases, it could be a project that, for example, maybe it's a stream restoration project and we're trying to, you know, indirectly build a bit of a portfolio in those types of projects that would lead to bigger and better things. You know, we might take on that project knowing that it will lose a little bit of money because it helps build our resume for other things. You know, standard kind of intersection improvement that we have, 150 of them right now. I don't know if we would maybe take that project knowing we're gonna lose on it. That would be a decision to take up at the time.
Unless it's a client that we really.
Yeah, that's another thing. If it's a client we're trying to, we've done a little bit of homework on and we've made a concerted effort to, sort of make a play at winning some work with that particular client, then, that's something that we would also consider. Other projects that are kind of smaller, maybe it's not worth the trouble, or we don't meet the key staff requirements in some cases. Sometimes they have very specific requirements that we may or may not be able to fill. Or there are instances where we can't provide all the services on the contract and we're subbing out a large portion of the project. It doesn't make financial sense to, take on that project where we're, bringing on subs for 60% of the project. Something like that, or, something a little less aggressive than 60%, but so yeah, there's a variety of different factors.
And JC, here's an example of the life cycle of what you're learning today. Is just today, Rachel got a call from another firm asking if we have particular key staff that we would end up being a sub on a contract that they're going after. She is able to check the resumes in that area of those disciplines and found 2 different kind of discipline tasks that she couldn't identify anybody on our staff has done before. So then she has to contact, let's say, Billy, Ray, Anthony, saying, hey, do we have this or not? We're not quite sure. And that kind of slows down the whole food chain in this project. So JC, if that helped answer your question, all of that, good question. Thank you.
We're almost done. So here's an example of a project example that I like the description of. I have some information on the right here of things that I like about this project write-up. It starts out with the overview of the background of the project. The last sentence of that overview says that we met the schedule needs. Obviously, clients love that. It had specific construction timing that we had to work within. We have a couple of paragraphs separated by a bold heading to draw out, what those paragraphs are. Sometimes, like when clients are looking at these, okay, well, I'm the structural engineer on this review team. I don't really care about the non-structural items, so I'm just gonna look at that structural paragraph, and then ignore the rest of it. It's not logical for us to think that everybody is going to read every single word of every single proposal that we write. So trying to get them to get the take-home message as much as possible is preferred. And then this one, I like that we have a quote on the bottom. It's not from the client, but it's from Bicycle Advocates for Annapolis and Anne Arundel County, somebody that was directly affected by this project and the design, and they were happy with the project and how it was executed. So that's something that is great to include that we don't have on a lot of projects. So the more clients or the more quotes that we can get from our clients would be great to both include on these and on our website and other areas of the proposal. So that's something that we always want. This has a couple of pictures. They're kind of small. It is a bit text heavy on this, but we do have some colorful pictures. We also described the design that provided cost savings, both in the construction and maintenance cost. Again, clients love that. And it describes that we met the project goals. Here's another one that I like. Again, same kind of overview background. It says what the goals are. We have a high level overview of what we did, and it's not too specific. This intro paragraph is something that we can use in other areas of other proposals. Maybe we're not using this project as an example, but we'll use that paragraph in other proposals to say, hey, we did all these different kinds of things, and this is like a summary of what we did on that project. So just to let you know. And again, a couple paragraphs with bold headings, draw out the information that we're trying to portray. We have a visual, a map with a legend, We describe the project process loosely telling a story, you know. This case can be chronological, not everyone can necessarily be if we're talking about highway and structures and water resources, and that's fine, but this one, it makes sense too. And then I like how this one is described in a way that's easy for a client to see that we can follow the same process for them and their project, even if it's not the exact same type of project. You know, the process is we gather data, we analyze it, we run these traffic modeling programs and simulations, we analyze the data, we just develop our recommendations, and then we provide a report with our findings. So things that marketing staff is always looking for, I know I've said this before in quarterly staff meetings, but we always want pictures. I can use these pictures all day, every day. So pictures of not just the projects, I mean, completed picture projects are obviously great, but pictures of our staff doing things that you are doing on the projects, like regardless, you're going out in teams of at least 2, I think, generally speaking, as far as I'm aware. So have someone take picture of the other person doing what they're supposed to be doing, you know, gathering the field data, measuring things, whatever you're doing. I always need these pictures. I can use these all over the place. And I think in general, after we finish a project, if we can kind of all get in the habit of adding that project to your resume, and then also going back to the client to kind of follow up with them and see, can we draw any kind of quotes from them? Are they satisfied with our work? Is there anything that we can do to wrap up the project and address any lingering concerns? And then if they have any quotes that we can use in marketing materials, then please forward it to me and the marketing team. And that is it. Another question, unless JC wants to. Okay. If anybody has any questions on developing their own personal resumes or drafting project write-ups, I am happy to help. Just let me know. We can sit down for a few minutes and I can kind of go over what we're looking for. I've done this job for 10 years. I've seen a lot of really crappy written things over the course of that time. So I have my list of things that I'm always looking at. Like I read something and I always cut it out. So I'm happy to help kind of work through that process. I mean, most of the time we use a lot of project manager resumes. We are using more, I would say, design engineers resumes, starting to, for people that have been here or been in this type of job for at least a year. So you have to have some kind of a basis for projects to put on a resume to be able to use your resume. But before we even use your resume, for us as Brutus and Associates, it would be a great idea for everyone to write a list of all the projects that they work on and what they did on those projects. It is something that is needed for you. I can't stress that enough. Even if Brutus and Associates doesn't use that, it is good for your career development and it's something that everybody needs.
Thank you, Rachel. I have a suggestion. Is this something that we could look into creating like a template that everybody can use?
A template
for the project write-up and the key stuff resumes for BI, like not for
Yes.
client by client.
Yeah,
We have templates for all of it.
we have templates.
I know we have a template that we're currently using, but can we revamp it, revise it a little bit to like when I say template, it's more like breaking it down a little bit more, like what information you're looking for, kind of things that you presented today at the training.
Sure.
Like maybe make sure that there's an intro, scope, role, stuff like that, so that
I can definitely do
you
that.
don't forget. Yeah.
One other thing that is something to consider, every project has what I call the fun fact. It's some interesting piece of information. And that's always useful to sort of highlight, or if there's something that is maybe a little less than common on a project that is sometimes helpful to maybe draw special attention to. We kind of use those in different forms for different reasons, but it's very helpful to know. And you guys are the ones that are working on the projects day in and day out, so you have a much better grasp of what is important in the projects than anyone, on this side of the table ever would. So
Solutions you've engineered.
and the solutions and the key points and anything that would be interesting to a client, you guys know much better than we do. So we're looking for just a little bit of give and take, to help us understand what we should be presenting, because otherwise we're just kind of reading what is written and perhaps not drawing the right conclusions, which is not necessarily a good approach. What I'm kind of referring to is we had a project that had some like amplified public involvement support that isn't really common to what our project is. We knew that it had public involvement, but we kind of did some things that were above and beyond, and the client really liked it. So that helps us in our project write-up if we can, pull a little highlight box and give like a client quote, or put a special section in the write-up, and then that can kind of filter into other sections of whatever proposal that we're doing. Just things like that. Any kind of fun fact, information, useful pieces of work that has kind of residual value. It's not just the, I did the highway design, I did the water resources and so forth and so on. We're trying to just make things a little more readable. And sometimes if you're just discussing the technical content of the design, depending on who's reading that, it's a little bit dry. So any kind of added flair that we can add, just makes the proposal that much better. Any other questions?
Feel free to contact me at any time with any questions about this. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Does the JIRA give a report, an overview of projects and hours spent that we can use?
Yes. Well, hours by project or
Hours by project.
yeah, you can look at it from JC, I'm gonna pick on you because you asked the question before. You can run a report and it will tell us any project that JC has charged time to. You can also look at it from a project and pull project X, and you can see every employee that's charged time to that project. So they do, the marketing department does do that and run those reports. The problem is if you have, time charged to a project and then they go to pull that out of your resume and, it doesn't exist in there. So usually when that happens, we're, typically we get like 2 to 3 weeks from advertisement to submission date to prepare a proposal. And it's never a good idea to have to craft new information while you're on the clock doing the proposal. It's much better to have something in existing resources and being able to customize it or just add a little bit of flair to it. So of course, there's always exceptions to the rule and that kind of stuff happens, but best case scenario in a perfect world, we can just kind of pick the projects off the shelf and resumes and plug them into the rest or plug them into the proposal as we go. And it's not really that big of a deal, but that's really what we're shooting for. It's less labor intensive when we're on the clock.
He says, great.
Thanks. Thank you, Casey.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.